I died the moment I was about to end my own life. It sounds strange, I know. But I wasn't afraid of death. What I feared was living a life without knowing why I existed. My name is Matthew Harper. I was 47 years old at the time, divorced, unemployed, drowning in debt, and haunted every night by a question I couldn't bring myself to answer. If I disappeared tomorrow, would anyone even notice? I used to believe that if I just worked hard, followed the rules, and did the right thing, everything would be okay. But sometimes you can live by every rule, and life still crumples you like a scrap of paper. I lost my wife because I chose a report over dinner with her. I lost my mother while on a Zoom call, missing her final phone call. And I lost myself bit by bit without a sound. There came a point when I stopped trying to find a reason to keep going. But in a strange twist of fate, just as I was about to give up, life pulled me back with a collision that left me completely unconscious. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer in this world. But the strangest thing wasn't that I saw I had died. It was that, for the first time, I saw my entire life as if it had never truly belonged to me. In the next part, I'll share what happened in the first few seconds after I left my body, and why I now believe we don't just live once. From the outside, my life looked fine. I had a good job as a mid-level manager at a tech company. I had a kind wife, a tidy home, and a dog named Max. People thought I was the decent kind of man who showed up to work on time, didn't drink too much, and didn't gamble away our savings. But there was one thing I was missing, meaning. Every morning, I woke up feeling like I was reliving a dream one I no longer believed in. Every night, I went to bed unsure if there was even a reason to get up the next day. I remember once, my wife stood in the kitchen doorway, exhausted, still holding a soup spoon in her hand. She asked, "Matthew, are you even hearing me?" And I said, "Yeah. But can I answer after I send this email?" I don't remember what that email was about, but I'll never forget the way she looked at me that day. She left 3 months later. I don't blame her. The truth is, I had already left too. My body was still sitting there. But I was gone long before she walked out. My mother died of a stroke. The last time she called me, I was in the middle of a Zoom meeting. I saw her name flash on the screen, and I hit decline. I thought, I'll call her back later. Only I never got the chance to. Max, my beloved dog, had grown old. One evening, I came home late and forgot to close the gate. The next morning, I found him lying by the side of the road. A car hadn't been able to stop in time. I looked at his bent collar and thought, just like me. Something once loyal, forgotten. Then came the day the company let me go. They called it restructuring. What I heard was, "You don't belong here anymore. No more family. No more job. No real reason left to keep going." That afternoon, I wandered along the highway. I didn't have a plan. I just wanted to get away. Away from the same old walls, from a bedroom that was too quiet, from a mind full of space. That's when I saw it. A car stalled in the middle of the road, smoke rising. Inside, a woman and a child, both terrified. No one stopped. I ran toward the car just in time to yell, "Get out of the car!" Then a screech, headlights, a blast of burning wind, an explosion. And then a light. I didn't feel any pain. No more sirens. No more screaming. No more gravity. In the next part, I'll tell you about the very first moment I left my body and why, in that moment, I didn't want to come back. I didn't fall. I didn't float. I just wasn't there anymore. No sound. No gravity. Nobody. I was in a strange space, warm, soft, as if I were wrapped in a giant blanket made of light. Not a blinding light, but a light that knew how to hold me. It didn't see me. It felt me. I was no longer me, and yet I had never been more aware of myself. I looked down, and there was me. My body twisted, bleeding, motionless, surrounded by flashing red lights and the shouts of a panicked crowd. And strangely, I didn't feel afraid. I wasn't panicked. There was only one feeling, peace. Then I felt something approaching. Not footsteps. Not a visible form. Just a presence, like when someone stands behind you and you know they're there, even if you never heard them coming. I turned, and it was there. A being of light. Human-like in shape, neither male nor female, with glowing white hair lit from within, and eyes so deep they seemed to see straight into my childhood. The being didn't speak, but I heard it clearly inside my mind. "We are here. We have always been here." I began to cry, not with tears, but with my soul. Besides the being of light, 2 more figures appeared. One was a young woman with warm brown skin and long flowing hair. The other wore traditional clothing, like an elder from an ancient tribe. They both raised their hands, not touching me, but hovering above my body. And yet, I could feel it. Waves of energy are flowing through me, not healing my physical wounds, but the fractures in my soul. The times my father hit me, the nights I kept the light on because I feared the yelling, the moments I whispered to myself, I'm not good enough. Everything began to lift, layer by layer, gently. I don't know how long I lay there, because time didn't exist. There was only now stretching wide, like an embrace without end. And then I heard a sound, not a sound in the physical sense, but a kind of knowing that reverberated straight into my chest. It's time to remember. And before me, not a screen, but a living space of memory began to unfold. I saw myself at 8 years old, trembling in front of the classroom, my face burning red as the other kids laughed at me. I saw myself at 25, screaming in my ex's face, "You're a burden to me." I saw my mom call me 5 times, and no one picked up. I saw Max, my dog, waiting by the window, hoping I'd come home, and giving up. But the most painful part wasn't what I saw. It was what I felt. I felt their pain as if it were my own. I hurt for them. I choked on their sorrow. I was ashamed of myself. There was nowhere to hide, no excuse to give, no lie to tell. And then, the being asked me one question, just one. "Matthew, have you ever loved someone with your whole heart?" I couldn't answer. And just as I was about to turn away, another soul appeared. Wide eyes, tiny frame. In the next part, I'll tell you about that soul, someone I had never met, but who changed me forever. When that question echoed, "Have you ever loved someone with your whole heart?" I hadn't yet answered when the space around me shifted. All the light withdrew like a receding tide. Everything became silent. Not empty silent, but the kind of silence that forces you to hear your heartbeat, the one you never notice until it's all that's left. And then I saw her, a tiny figure standing in a soft glow, in the middle of that strange stillness. She didn't walk toward me. She didn't call my name. She just stood there, waiting. A little girl with soft brown curls, chestnut-colored hair. She held something in her hand, a stuffed animal, maybe fuzzy, blurry, half real, half not. I didn't know how I knew, but I knew. She was my daughter. Not with logic, not with memory, but with something deeper, a knowing that came from the soul, a memory I never had but still felt imprinted in me like I'd carried it all my life. I whispered, "Who are you?" And like everything in that realm, she didn't speak with words, but I heard her, deep in my heart. "I'm the daughter you never got to meet. But I always knew who you were." My throat tightened, my chest clenched not with pain, but with a grief that wrapped itself around love. I couldn't recall ever having a child. No one had ever told me anything. And then a foggy memory began to surface. I was 27. There had been a girl. We were together for only a few months. We broke up quietly, no fights, no contact after that. Had she? I couldn't let the thought finish. I was never born. Her voice echoed inside me softly, as if she were telling a sad story that didn't belong to her. I dropped to my knees. I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't hold her. I couldn't apologize. All I could do, open my heart completely. I don't know how long I wept. In a place without time, every tear seemed to touch centuries of memory. And then something miraculous happened. She stepped closer. No sound. No footsteps. She simply appeared in front of me. Her tiny hands reached out and rested on my shoulders. And though they didn't physically touch, I felt it. For the first time in my life, I felt touched by a love that asked for nothing. "I forgive you, Dad. I never blamed you. You didn't know, but I was always with you. Can you do one thing for me? Live, with an open heart, the way I'm holding you now." A sob broke from the deepest part of my chest. I couldn't hold it back. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I said it over and over, not to be forgiven, but to finally let go. She smiled like morning sun breaking through fog. And then, her form began to fade. Not disappear, but become part of the light that now surrounded me. I let myself fall back, resting on a space as soft as water. Eyes closed. No more sadness. No more shame. Just a lightness. The being of light appeared again. I couldn't see a face, but I felt its infinite gentleness. "You've seen what you needed to see. You've touched the deepest truth, unconditional love. Now you may choose." I knew what was coming. I would have to choose, stay here or return to that old earthly life. That world I once found meaningless, heavy and cold. I stayed silent. Here I was loved. I was healed. There was no pain. no loss. But back there, I'd face it all again: loneliness, burdens, skepticism, and yes, the unpaid bills. But I also knew, if I stayed, the story would end here. If I returned, the story would finally begin. I asked, why show me all of this, only to make me choose? The being answered not with words, but with the truth that moved through me like breath, because love doesn't force. It only guides. I looked back and held on to the last image still glowing in my heart, her eyes. Those wide, shimmering eyes, clear as if seeing the world for the very first time without pain. And I nodded. I will go back. And this time, I will truly live. I don't remember how I fell, only what it felt like cramming the entire universe into a tiny glass bottle. The sound of the ventilator, surgical lights above me, a nurse shouting, "He's awake." Everything was loud, chaotic, but inside me a stillness I had never known. I had returned, not as a survivor, but as someone who had just been born a second time. And from the moment I returned, I knew I could never live the same way again. In the next part, I'll share the first thing I did after waking up, and why I believe our true purpose in life isn't found in what we do, but in what we carry in our hearts. I opened my eyes, not the way you open them after a night's sleep, but as if someone had given me a brand new pair. Everything was clear, so clear it gave me chills. Not in sight, but clear in meaning. I saw the nurse holding my hand. I didn't know her name, but I felt her worry rising in her chest like rainwater pooling in a cup. I saw the doctor beside her, tired, but still holding his voice steady. I didn't know them, but I felt them as if they were a part of me. I stayed in the hospital for 12 more days. Each day felt like a new layer of skin growing back, not just on my body, but on my soul. I didn't tell anyone right away what I had experienced. Not because I feared they wouldn't believe me, but because it was too sacred to speak of too soon. I started noticing the things I used to overlook. The sound of wind slipping through the hospital window felt like someone whispering something gentle. The scent of antiseptic, something I once hated, now reminded me of the tender hands of the beings of light. The look in the orderly's eyes as he brought in my meal was a quiet kind of pride I had never paused to see before. The day I left the hospital, I didn't know where to begin. But for the first time in many years, I felt okay not having all the answers. All I needed to know was this: if there is love in each step, I am on the right path. I returned to my old apartment, a place that had once felt like a box of meaninglessness. But this time I cleaned it out. Not because clutter bothered me, but because every item now felt more emotional than material. I kept my mother's bracelet. I rehung the wedding photo with my ex-wife, not to hold on, but to remember with gratitude. I placed Max's collar on the table, a medal of honor for a love that had never wavered. And then I wrote, not to publish, not to be known, just because I had to record the things that earthly language was too poor to hold. If I didn't write them down, I'd lose them forever. I started meeting people again, but not like before, not to prove myself or to hide myself. No, I just listened. The Uber driver who took me grocery shopping on my first day out of the hospital told me his wife had just been diagnosed with cancer. I didn't offer advice. I just held his hand for 3 seconds, and he broke down in tears. I ran into my ex-wife by chance, at our old coffee shop. She looked surprised I was thinner, older, but something was different in my eyes. I didn't apologize. I just asked, that day when you said I think you're alive but already dead, what did that feel like for you? She smiled. For the first time in 5 years. We didn't get back together, but we became human again. Truly. And then an idea came to me, not like a lightning bolt, but like a quiet knock at dawn. Listen to those who no longer have much time left to speak. I signed up as a volunteer at the hospital's palliative care unit. Not to be a doctor, but to sit beside the beds of terminal cancer patients and listen as they told the stories of their lives. Some talked a lot. Some said nothing, just held my hand for a long, long time. I didn't feel like I was helping anyone. I felt like I was being brought back to life through every story, every memory, every gaze that knew. The time left was real. I called that little room the quiet room. No TV, no judgment, no rush. Just a soft chair and 2 human beings, one nearing the end, the other learning to begin again. Someone once asked me, "What's your life's purpose now?" I said, not to save the world, just to listen to one person deeply. In the next part, I'll share with you what the being of light left with me. Before I returned, there was one small thing I took with me for the rest of my life. Not everything I saw on the other side remains clear now. Some images have faded like dreams dissolving at sunrise. Some moments I simply can't put into words, because earthly language isn't wide enough to hold the invisible. But there is one thing I remember as if it were carved into the center of my heart. A speck of light rested in the palm of my hand as I began to return. I asked the being, just as everything around me was dissolving into the infinite, "What is this?" I asked, and I heard the answer not aloud but deep within. "It is part of you that can never be lost." I carried it with me. No one can see it. No one can measure it. But I feel it every time I stand in a quiet room where someone is crying. I feel it when someone shares an old pain they've kept buried for 30 years. I feel it when I sit alone doing nothing at all and still feel enough. Every one of us carries a speck of light like that. But most of us have forgotten. We chase deadlines. We try so hard to be loved. We live as if life is a competition, and we forget we were already enough before we were even born. I don't share this story to convince you about life after death. I share it because I believe we can die while still breathing if we forget why we came here. Not to get rich, not to prove anything, but to truly touch another soul with our presence. These days, when I wake up in the morning, I no longer ask, "What will I do today?" Instead, I ask, "Who will I love today? What will I listen for that no one else has noticed? What will I forgive not because they deserve it, but because I deserve to be free?" If you're still listening to me now, then maybe you too have asked, "Why am I here?" I don't have that answer for you, but I do have a suggestion. Go back to the moment you felt truly alive, not because you achieved something, but because you were fully present. When you saw a child laugh, you laughed too. When you hugged someone and didn't know why, your eyes filled with tears. When you sat in silence beside someone who was dying and knew you didn't need to say a word. That's when the light inside you begins to glow again. I died, and I didn't come back just to live. I came back to remember. Remember that I was once loved, even when I was far from perfect. Remember that forgiveness is the key that opens every door. Remember that I once saw a soul that had never been born, and it taught me how to live. And if one day someone asks you, "Have you truly lived?" don't rush to answer. Instead, begin to live from that very moment. I used to fear dying. Now, I fear living without ever truly knowing I was alive. Don't wait until the light comes to take you away to realize you've carried that light in your heart all along. If you've ever been through something that woke you up, leave a comment. Tell me what made you stop running and start truly showing up. And if you feel like you need to hear more stories like this, hit follow, because who knows, the next story might be your own.